Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton, and today with me is Kevin Annett. We're talking about the preparation of tribunals into crimes
Hello
against.
and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine
Sorry, this is the video in the background. Well, I did my usual sound check automatically. That's great. So today we're talking about, first of all, about the preparation of tribunals for crimes against humanity, but also we're talking about the disinformation and sabotage that is basically thrown at in activists and people who are trying to work to shut these crimes down. So very recently, there was a spat between Kevin Annett and the ITNJ, that is the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. And I actually wanted to use this broadcast to clarify matters, to allow Kevin to reply as well and make things clear from his point of view. So welcome, Kevin. How are you doing?
Hi, Catherine. It's good to be back.
So tell us what actually triggered this, because usually attacks follow certain campaigning work. So what in your mind has triggered the current issues?
Well, it's most odd because it's not even a spat. It was kind of a unilateral broadside blast at myself and ITCCS from this International Tribunal of Natural Justice, the ITNJ. Now, it came from two people, a man called Sacha Stone and then Robert David Steele, the self-described former CIA officer. Now, it followed a 3-week, very intense period where a whole number of things had come out, as you probably know, going to murderbydecree.com, our site. This is all posted there. First of all, Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, was sidelined in basically a palace coup on February 22nd. And the next day, a ceremony of the Ninth Circle was actually stopped by some of our common law sheriffs in Rome. That was the same week that the Cardinal George Pell went to jail in Australia. A lot of things were opening up. And then the most amazing thing happened. The head of the Mormon Church, Russell Nelson, sits down and has a private meeting with Pope Francis right after that. And they open a Mormon temple in Rome, which is extremely odd because the Catholic Church considers the Mormons a pagan cult. And they don't allow pagans to build churches, let alone sit down and have private meetings with them. We do know what was behind that is that, interestingly, that same month, I had been approached by 3 different members, former members of the Mormon Church, who described very horrendous child sacrificial rituals in the main temple in Salt Lake City. And the ITCCS was on the verge of uncovering this. And then lo and behold, here's this meeting where our theory is that because the Ninth Circle has been under such heat and exposure, they're looking for other venues to practice in. And we believe this Mormon temple is one of them. Why else would the Mormons, who consider the Pope the Antichrist, and the Pope, who considers the Mormon pagan, sit down and have a private audience, not in the Pope Paul VI audience hall where they always receive the heads of other churches, but in a little room in Vatican City? It's a little office. We have it posted online. So it's very odd. We began to ask questions about that and really, take those steps to stop the Ninth Circle from meeting. And within a couple of days of us announcing this Mormon temple and the link to the Ninth Circle, bang, we're getting attacked by the ITNJ. Now, this is odd because up till now, they've ignored us. We wrote to them when they were formed in the summer of 2018. We invited them to look at our material, to work together. We had questions because of the presence of an Anglican bishop on their board of directors. And we actually have a policy not to work with organizations that are tied to the convicted criminal bodies like the Anglican Church. But through basically a back channel, we had to let them know that we can't work with you, but those of you within the ITNJ who are serious would like to have some kind of relationship with. So they had never answered at any level. They just ignored us. And yet within 48 hours of this thing about the Mormons coming out, bang, we're being attacked with the same old smears that people had put out before. Sacha Stone was writing to people and wondering, well, why hasn't the ITCCS published the names of the judges or the people who had gave the testimony? Well, anyone who knows legal procedure knows that when you're in a criminal investigation, you do not disclose the identity of court personnel. I mean, that'd be crazy. We made that mistake in Canada, and 6 of our Aboriginal members were killed, clearly from foul play. So it was the old bromide, the old kind of smear used against us. We wrote back to them and said, like, why are you doing this? Trying to ask clarification. And then he and this Robert David Steele come back and launch this vitriolic campaign personal. It's not even answering issues. It's Kevin's a liar. Nothing you say can believe. He says you can believe, just at a very personal, mud-throwing level. Then they both say they're going to contact the authorities, whoever that is, and have me removed from the public sphere and committed for psychiatric examination. Now, that is bizarre for one group of people. If you consider ITNJ to be a legitimate group, why would they suddenly try to get another campaign that's trying to expose these things, their main spokesperson, put away in jail in a psych ward? I mean, it doesn't make any sense unless we've hit a nerve. And just a final point on that, what was interesting was that this last month, and I didn't know this until they triggered this whole thing, and ITCCS had to respond. The ITCCS had received a communication from one of their sources in the British government that, in fact, the ITNG had been mentioned in a confidential memo going out within MI5. And it was clear that MI5 had been in a relationship with ITNG officers, if not outright funding them. And now that doesn't mean all the ITNG members knew about it. It means that select people, perhaps an Anglican bishop, who after all is obligated under the Anglican Communion to answer to the head of the church, Queen Elizabeth, who's a convicted felon. And that's a possibility. We don't have more evidence about that yet. But the point is, they're mentioned in government memos. And that's all going to be brought out during the week of action against criminal churches, April 14th to 21st. They were going to release it during that week. And yet the ITNJ did a preemptive strike against us, it looks like, because I think they got wind of that, and they're trying to delegitimate me and ITCCS. So that's what we think is going on, but it's following the classic pattern of, mud throwing on whistleblowers.
So just to clarify for the people, did I understand it right that what first came is actually a writing from the ITNJ to you, or was it the other way around? What came?
No, they didn't write to me directly. They wrote to. It was a alternative media interviewer named Sarah Westall. And Sarah, it's interesting because my interviews with Sarah Westall have had more than 500,000 hits over the last couple of months. So Sarah's interviews with me put me back big time into the international network, and they responded with an attack on me to Sarah. Sarah shared me with the emails, and I responded to them from that, and then they went after me in a big way.
Wow. So can you just name what were the accusations in that first email? So because you've sent your emails to me. I'm on your email list, and then based on your emails, I have contacted Robert David Steele myself, and I got a blast in the face that I will talk about later. But what exactly were the accusations to Sarah Westall?
It was one sentence, and I'm trying to find the email. I think it's been misplaced, but I'll get Sarah to send it back to me and show it to you. It was one sentence. He said something to the effect of, Kevin Annett cannot be believed. They've never shared the names of the judges or the court personnel at the tribunal. So again, it was that the same attack that's come out of people we know are government operatives saying, well, let's see the identity of these people, in a way to try to guilt us into telling who the top people are in this court, which would be suicidal to do that at this stage.
And then how is it? I mean, my understanding is that Intel kind of spies on all communication. So Intel probably knows who the top officers are. So what extra protection do people get from keeping their identity secret, given that actually the people who would be doing the killing would be Intel, and they have access to all the IDs?
It's likely that these identities are known. However, we took every step to protect them possible. Their names and communications with them was never done over the internet. One of them was actually a retired judge from a European country, and he had been off the radar for a number of years because he had run afoul of his own government because of his refusal to help cover up crimes by the Catholic Church. So it wasn't an overt kind of, none of them were out there overtly. They weren't even mentioned in communications and that. So I think that might have been one of the reasons why the opposition was so desperate to find out who they were, right?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, because my viewers are also looking always to how we're going to handle now the tribunals for the assaults from the intelligence agencies with directed energy weapons and so on. And my understanding and personal experience is that the level of penetration, especially when you are a victim, where, I have got eye implants, many others have eye implants, so everything I see, people can actually read out. So for us, I think we're so past it. I think actually for us, our case, the best protection is complete publicity, because then should any of the judges come to harm, we can show this is a statistical outlier, this is connected to the court cases, and we can actually act to,
No, I agree. And in fact, I agree with you. And that's been my protection. And that's personally what I followed. Now, the ITCCS is a decentralized network by necessity. There isn't a central group running it. It's by consensus. Each group in the different countries is free to use whatever methods they want. And we left it up to the judges and the citizen prosecutor what they wanted to do. And these people, some of them are old school. They still believe that anonymity is possible. So that was a result of that, more than kind of a central decision to do it that way. But no, I hear you, and I agree totally that is the best protection. And my recommendation actually early on was for everyone to come forward and say, here's what we're doing, here's where we are. I think psychologically, don't forget, this is all psyops. It's psychological warfare. So it's yet another way. If I was compelled to name their names, that would estrange me with the judges who wanted anonymity. If I felt psychologically levered into saying, okay, here's who they are. See, I'm not lying. Here's who they are. That's what they want. They want to trigger that response in us to create division within our group. Classic divide and conquer tactics, that security forces use. So it could be that as well,
I can certainly see that, and I can confirm that I'm dealing with a lot of people who, just as you say, they still believe that there's some sort of privacy, even though I'm trying to tell them that actually, it's holding us back, because we don't have these network effects that come out from the fact that if you go public, people who are similar to you will identify and will come forward in turn. But so you are saying that basically in these tribunals that the entire strife is about, there were even, real judges involved, because as I understand, in the common law courts, you don't have to have classically trained judges. Is that right?
That's right. They're considered judicial advisors. They're not judges in the way you see in the admiralty courts, where they have absolute control over the process, can dismiss juries, change the record, whatever. They can't do that. They're just basically advisors to the jury, and make sure that the procedure ran according to due process and the rules of evidence and all those things you use in a court of law of record.
So if the judges are anonymous, which part of the court case is public? At what point does the public actually know? I mean, I guess the judgments per se are public.
The final judge, what was published in the first case, there were two cases in the International Common Law Court of Justice. The first was the most publicized because it lasted longest. It was based on our 20 years research in Canada and a lot of contacts all over the world. The documentation, for example, the subpoenas, the final court orders, the indictment, all of the evidence, of course, is published online in that 3 DVD set. It's like 5.5 hours of evidence that I posted on behalf of the prosecutor's office, showing all the evidence we used to convict these people. The final verdict and sentence of the court, all those documents, that's all online. What wasn't online is the identity of the jurors, and because they didn't want to be, the 58 of them didn't want to be identified publicly. That was one of the conditions on which they agreed to be a citizen juror, and we had to honor that. But most of the other stuff, that's why, the attacks by people saying, where's the evidence? They either have never looked at the website or they're being deliberately duplicitous, because it's all there, right?
Yeah. And you were
effective.
As I understood, did I understand it right that even the testimony is publicly available of these people that was given to the jury? So basically what the jury based a decision on.
Yes. As you go to our website, murderbydecree.com, and you'll see under video evidence the there's 3 YouTube links, part 1, part 2, and the final verdict and sentence. And on there, like I say, we have people, eyewitnesses speaking. I'm presenting articles. Like, for example, one piece of evidence is how the death rate in the Indian schools in Canada was over 50% the very first year they opened. You wouldn't have that enormous death rate unless it was intent. And we linked that to various churches and governments, the Jesuits, how they had set up these schools. Very incontrovertible evidence, that there was deliberate genocide going on. That's the kind of evidence we've had up online since 2012.
If you allow, I just would like to share my screen and show people where they can find this, because my view is that if you don't believe that this stuff is going on, I personally think you can listen to the evidence and come to your own judgment, right? I mean, part of the common law is that we should all be judges about what's going on in our community. Right. So, let me just share my screen and show people how they can find this. Hang on. Oh, goodness. My share screen button has been disabled. I think this is this is quaint. This is now the newest joke from Intel.
So it's just murderbydecree.com, and then the headlines at the top, you'll see video evidence.
Here it is. I think, I hope people can see it. They probably can't see my cursor. So this is murderbydecree.com. And then at the top, you have video evidence, the link, and this is what I clicked on. And as you scroll down, here is literally all the...
if you go up again, I'll explain.
Yeah.
That very first link is... Oh, just go down. I'm sorry. Just go down.
This one.
Yeah, the first one, that's our documentary film released in 2007, which kind of introduced everything. And then the next 3 links that's part 1, part 2 of the common law evidence, and that's the final verdict and sentence.
That's here. Yeah.
So it's all there. Yep.
It's literally all there.
Yep.
And then arrest orders.
That's the arrest warrant being read. That's the eyewitness to the murder of one of the eyewitnesses, the nurse who worked in the hospital. That's the site of the Nanaimo Indian Hospital where the experiments were done. That's the bones we uncovered from the dig at the Mohawk Indian Anglican School in 2011 that confirmed we're human. That's an eyewitness. I mean, it goes on and on. It's just it's filled with that evidence, right?
I mean, if you allow, I'm just going to scroll down so that people can see that there are actual people showing their face and making a testimony. It's not just because what people want to present, and this is how they have been presenting it to me, is that all along it was just you and nothing was going on.
That's absurd. I mean, how can I invent these people? How can I invent government documents? And most importantly, look at the effect of the Pope and 3 other cardinals stepping down, right?
Yeah. And for me, I mean, personally, what counts the most is getting together all the evidence and all the testimonies in one place. And I really encourage people to go there. I mean, what I really encourage people is stop watching TV and start listening to real life testimony. So, we don't leave judgments up to judges anymore, and we don't leave judgments up to disinformation agents anymore. So I really, the genocide in Canada needs to be heard about anyway, so your time wouldn't be wasted. If you're watching this, you have to learn and you have to listen to these people. You have to look at their faces, come to your own decision that they're saying the truth or, lying if you like, whatever, but you have to make these assessments. And I emphasize this because going forward, the crimes that we want to uncover involving neurotechnology and modern classified technology are so mind-blowing that you need to get into the habit. I'm now talking not to you, Kevin, I'm talking to our viewers. You guys need to get into the habit of reading faces, of coming to your own decisions if they're saying the truth, find out how to spot a liar, find out about micro-expressions. And, we all need to learn this sort of stuff. And I personally am sick to the core of just people going online, banding some stuff around, because I was the butt of that as well. I think there's 4 hours worth of video, so-called testimony against me that I still have to debunk. And it is highly damaging. And I absolutely hate it when the evidence that they, purport to present is not up to scratch. Yeah. Now, the issue I wanted to ask, so when you got attacked by the, so these people, you had the interview with Sarah Westall, then they contacted the Sarah Westall about you, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be trusted," in response to this interview that got over 500,000 views. And then this entire conversation ensued because you replied to, I think, Sacha Stone, the founder of the ITNJ, and Robert David Steele, who I think last time I checked, he was the chief counsel, but maybe now he's only a commissioner. I'm not quite sure.
I actually didn't even respond to Steele. It was only to Mr. Stone. And I copied Robert David Steele because I knew that Sarah Westall had mentioned that he was also involved. So it wasn't even, I was just responding to, what he had raised, Stone had, right?
Right.
And then both of them came back at me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, so is it possible that we bring up the emails that you sent them so that we can talk about the actual content? But can I share my screen and actually maybe show the
Sure.
email?
Yep.
Okay. So then let me just it takes me 1 second because I have to open this up, because I very much prefer, instead of just talking abstractly, actually just bringing up the precise emails. And now when I in response to the email that I'm about to share, I also contacted Robert David Steele because I had his email. I didn't have the email of Sacha Stone, and I asked, what exactly is this about, and what is the deal with the ITNJ? And I was referring to something that I consider to be cartel signaling. And then I just got the most amazing reply from Robert. But hang on, let me bring this up. So the first email, I think, was this. Oh yes, exactly. Sorry, I've got it. So, okay, maybe while I'm pottering around, I'll put the screen over to you, and you can give these people more background about what exactly they accused you of, because there were a lot of weird allegations.
Oh, well, no, actually, the only actual allegation came from Mr. Stone, where he said we haven't seen who these judges are, and after that, there were no allegations. Mr. Steele simply said, "You're a lunatic. We're going to make sure that you're put in jail and put in a psych ward." Basically, that there was no sane debate at all. It was this hysterical personal attack, and that's essentially what it's amounted to. And people only act that way, if they're being manipulated. I mean, here, and or they're panicking about something, and they're desperate to delegitimate somebody. Usually because either they're being paid to or they're being given their marching orders by somebody. And I believe that, of course, it happens so quickly after this stuff opening up in Rome. I mean, the Church of England is the Church of Rome. At the Holyrood meeting between Pope Benedict and Queen Elizabeth in August 2010, she essentially agreed to bring the Church of England back into the Church of Rome. And that means being under the authority of the Pope, so-called Pope, and this policy of crimen solicitanis, where you're supposed to cover up any harming of children. So it's institutionalized, that criminal conspiracy. If you hit Rome, you're hitting the Church of England now. And that's clearly the government of England and the Church of England, I believe, is involved in the ITNJ. So it's not at all a stretch to see where this is coming from, right?
So in the meantime, I found the email, but this is absolutely mind-blowing that, what you've just explained. So does it mean that once the Church of England is already under the Pope, has that already happened? And if so, would that mean that the British government would be obliged to cover up crimes against children?
That's exactly right. But okay, now some people suggest that the Church of England was never apart from Rome. When you look at the symbols of the City of London and the Vatican and the two keys and all that, okay, it's just been a formality. But what was interesting was when Ratzinger went to Holyrood Castle in Edinburgh and the Queen sat down, he stayed there overnight, and we believe there was a sacrificial ritual in the Ninth Circle that night to seal the deal, as they always do. That for some reason, probably because their Vatican was so under attack, that was as the common law court was forming, they knew that this evidence was going to come out. Ratzinger was probably trying to bolster up as much support as he could, knowing these attacks were coming, and making sure that the Church of England was in the fold. Because if the Anglican clergy are under the same obligation to cover it up, that's another flank that's covered and protected. So I think that clearly is what motivated it. in terms of that event.
Wow. I mean, when you get an entire large organization like that, and you compel them from top down to cover up a crime, you are basically obliging thousands and thousands of people to cover up your crimes. And these people would have their individual network, so it can have a complete stranglehold in a country in terms of systems. So let me share my screen and let me show the email that I've received. Oh, sorry, I still, okay.
I should just mention, folks, one final point on that. Yeah. The British government is obligated. Queen Elizabeth is a head of state. And as she goes, the whole government goes. So people say, well, why would MI5 back ITNJ and create ITNJ? Well, for obvious reasons, right? To contain and control any eyewitness who would come forward who might name the Queen of England. It's controlled opposition, right?
Absolutely. I also would personally, I would argue that MI5 and MI6 are in some respects not even really controlled by the Queen herself, and might even hold the Queen hostage for the Jesuits, right, which are the military intelligence enforcement arm of the Vatican. So I'm not even sure.
All roads lead to Rome.
Exactly. So let me share my screen now. Again, the share button, as I classically use it, has been disabled. So I'm going to share the screen. So what you should see is the PDF that I opened. I'm going to blow it up a bit. Is this the email? This is your reply to the ITNJ, I think. I hope people can see it. Is this the one you mean, or is there another letter?
Yes, that's the first letter I replied with. And then the ITCCS itself wrote a letter, more serious, expressing their real concerns about what they were doing.
Yeah, so this is basically a letter that you sent. And you addressed it, because here I just see that it's sent to the email list, but you addressed it to the ITNJ directly,
That's right.
I guess. And then you explained that you need to protect the evidence and the witnesses in an ongoing criminal investigation. It made it imperative for the identity of the judges, jury, and prosecutors of the court to remain strictly confidential. Right now, as long as the affidavits and the evidence is not secret, I don't personally see a problem with that, because typically, okay, I'm basically scrolling through so that people can see it and come back to it later. This is just the end of the email. So I hope that people can read it at their leisure later. Now, one of the things I would like to point out, and then I can bring up the other emails if you like, is that what the intelligence agencies typically do is they like to keep the evidence secret. Okay, so they sometimes, if you go to the IPT, right, they will put everything under classified and redacted and this and that. So you can never actually make your own informed decisions about what exactly was in the evidence and what decision was reached, right? Because as soon as you can compare and contrast the two, you know if there was a legitimate process that agreed with what you would say or not, right? So they remove the evidence and then they show the judgment that typically hammers the victims. Now, in the case of the ITSCC, is that right?
ITCCS.
ITCCS, forgive me. ITCCS, of course, right? Because crimes of church and state. There, it's exactly the other way around. So you have the people who have, come up with with this judgment. That bit is confidential, but the evidence and the judgment is.
It's all out in the open. It's all being published. It's all out in the open. It's been online for 6 years now.
Exactly. So, and the important thing is, as soon as you have these two, well, you don't even need to care about the people in between, because as long as you think, yeah, well, based on that evidence, that's the conclusion I would reach, right? That is pretty much it. Okay.
The very fact that the opposition is attacking us not on the evidence, but on trying to find the identity is what you do. It's a classic lawyer's trick. When the evidence is against you, attack the witness. You say, Kevin's illegitimate, you see? Because he's not showing us this, when in fact it distracts everybody from the solid evidence we produced, which showed that these churches and governments are deliberately planning and committing genocide, ongoing, right?
Absolutely. Now, you have, I have got one email here from you, which is your reply to Sasha Stone. Would you like to share that as well? Sure. Okay, hang on. Let me, I need to find a way to actually show it. Just a sec. Because here, this is your email from, I think, the 17th of March. Okay. Yes, 17th of March. Let me share my screen. Okay. So let me blow it up.
Now that's the ITCCS response.
Oh, sorry. Is that, yeah? Because this one said, dear Mr. Stone. I thought this is what you meant.
No, I wrote one, and then the ITCCS wanted to go on record as responding, since it would lead into the other evidence they had about the ITNJ. They wanted to just have it on record.
And when the ITCCS is writing, that is the group of people who are made up of the judges or the jurors or the prosecutors?
No, that was, courts are convened temporarily and then they're disbanded. So the judges in that, it's not a permanent office. This is the directorate, and those are the people who coordinate and speak for and help formulate policy for the ITCCS.
Yeah. And how many people does that comprise? I mean, just, not exact numbers, but I mean, is this like an international network, or is this
It's international, in that the people are from various countries, and it's not a large number. I'm not really allowed to say how many, but it's been a stable leadership for the past nearly 6 years. There was some turnover, there was attacks, some people resigned, there was some infiltration and sabotage that had happened, and so there have been ups and downs, but the core group has been in for a good 5 to 6 years now.
And one of the things that was said to me, is one accusation thrown at me was, oh well, the ITCCS only consists of you, but I guess there are more people. It's not just you.
Well, I often say that's a compliment. If it's just me, then I single-handedly got the Canadian government to admit genocide, and I forced the Pope and others to resign. Like, how does one man do that, right? Thanks for the compliment, guys, but that doesn't make any logical sense. That's what I mean. It's all irrational, innuendo. And
so basically, when a case like this comes, this is brought before the directorate, and then the directorate decides how to respond to that. Is that right?
Well, that's right. But then, for example, there's local as in nationally based groups that are affiliated with ITCCS who are not bound by that. They're free to go their own way. We decided that right at the beginning in June 2010 in Dublin. The ITCCS was actually formed by a number of different groups from around Europe, one from Canada. And they were like groups that were campaigning to get the Catholic Church held accountable for these crimes against kids, right? And they decided then that we're a federation. We weren't like a centralized body, because a centralized organization could be infiltrated and taken down and subverted very easily, considering who we're up against. So we deliberately kept more of a cell structure, if you like, although we had a central body to disseminate information, kind of compile the research and help local groups, right? And we survived that way. I mean, we were attacked seriously, but if we had been centralized, we would have been wiped out.
Yeah, no, I certainly that's one of the things I advocate to people, is to have a fluid model whereby people can just disassociate and regroup and flow around sabotage and effects like that. Now, I'm not sure. I probably didn't really share the email. Do you want to show and go through the reply you sent to Sasha Stone? Do you want to highlight some things in that? It's this one here.
No, that's the ITC.
Sorry, that's the ITC. Yes, exactly.
Frankly, that's the more important one. This one here. They make the point that it's really a hysterical diatribe. It's not based on any evidence or any real discussion of the issues.
Yeah, I guess they're saying that you've been slandered without any cause, proof, or provocation.
That's right. Yeah, it is a slander, which is in writing. Libel is word.
Yeah.
And then they just systematically take that challenge with hard evidence the accusations they make.
Actually, one of the things that occurred to me is that these were emails that I received, but I guess these are also announcements on the by the ITCCS, so they are also on the website, right?
I believe you'd find it in under that murder by decree site, ITCCS updates, I believe, but I can check on that. If you go up a little bit, there's an important point to give you an example of how irrational they're being. Sasha Stone claims we appear to have no mandate. Well, the mandate of ITCCS is posted right on the website, and anyone who took 3 seconds to look at the website would see the mandate. So this man obviously is making these broad shots at us without even taking the time to look at our website or the evidence, and that's proof that they're acting out of total ignorance and hearsay.
Absolutely. Actually, after this, let's quickly show the mandate. And then it says, for the record, that the directorate did in fact write to your ITNJ occasions.
They're claiming they never got the email, which we have proof that it was received.
Yes, and this is when you contacted the ITNJ and you asked to join forces.
Well,
in our efforts.
Actually, it wasn't an offer to join forces. It was an attempt to start communicating so that the people within ITNJ would have an alternative. We knew that ITNJ was likely controlled, and we were trying to give an avenue for people who might be sincere in there to come out of it. Yeah. And not because I knew we would eventually be badmouthed by their group, considering who was behind them.
Yeah. And then you say, okay, your letter claims knowledge of things that you cannot possibly know, such as your assertion that the ITCCS doesn't actually exist and that you are not based in Brussels.
How do you know that?
Yeah, exactly. Again, your claim is more reflection of your own questionable state of mind. Yes. Okay.
What they make in point 6, that they were going to refer me to authorities, kind of unnamed authorities, for a mental examination. Well, that's an interesting thing they're doing, because people probably know about the fixated threat laws in Britain. It governs any Commonwealth country, including Canada. And on it, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. It should say 2006, not 2008. It was brought in 2006. And it basically says anyone who shows an unusual concern for public figures or issues, including the British royal family, may be brought in for psychiatric examination because they might be suffering from a disorder, mental disorder, right, called fixated threat. And, you know, it's like what they did in the old Soviet Union. They would say that any political dissident has to be crazy.
Well, you know, I really encourage people to look up the Fixated Threat Assessment Act of 2006 here, because, I mean, I also have to say that psychiatry that was infiltrated, for example, by the CIA early on, and the guy who was involved in MK Ultra was also the president of the Psychiatric Association in Canada, and also, I think, high up in the American Psychiatric Association. So the intel agencies always wanted to control what I personally call the trash science of psychiatry, because it's completely devoid of any type of evidence that anybody in the real sciences would recognize. So it's a way to formalize pathological lying and then brain mutilate people by giving them neurotoxins, which they market as, you know, psychiatric drugs. But actually, interestingly, just as a footnote, there was a retired Swiss lawyer called Edmund Schönberger, who went public in an interview in German on my channel and said that the psychiatric drugs have been shown to reduce life expectancy by 1/3. So they're basically neurotoxins and genocide tools. So,
and I think it's significant they make the threat of confining for psychiatric examination, because the last 2 times I was in England, I was approached by the police and given a form. I wouldn't sign it. I refused. But they said, we have noticed your participation in these events and you might be brought in for investigation after. Well, they have a 3 strikes and you're out rule. That was twice. The second time I was actually deported from England in May 2011. Before I was to speak at a rally in Trafalgar Square about church and state involvement in child trafficking. This would be a 3rd. If they have me arrested, this would be the 3rd time, and they could legally incarcerate me. And that's why I don't think it's accidental they're making the threat there, because they know fully well that's the case. And so they kind of shot their bolt and said something they should have. They shouldn't have said anything, but they were so kind of gleeful that they could maybe get me under that law that they both blurted it out, which I found interesting.
Absolutely. And then the final point, I mean, actually, I think after this, maybe we should show their emails, because that's the real crux. But here, the final point is then we have not disclosed the identity of the trial judges or the court personnel during our case against the Vatican officials in 2012 and 13. Any rational person knowledgeable in the law and legal procedure knows that the confidentiality of court personnel is mandatory and crucial in major criminal cases brought against powerful groups like churches, governments, and organized crime. Right? I mean, yeah. I think here's a footnote. We can also, I think, probably also reference people to the many judges who were trying to convict the mafia in Italy who have been murdered. So,
yep.
And then it said, we suggest that it's not Kevin Annett, but you yourself who, to quote your reply, leaves a rather messy trail. So with all these, references to these juicy emails, are you fine? And are we allowed to publish the emails that you received from these two people?
Yeah, it's all public record. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, because one of the things is that when I emailed Robert David Steele, he snapped at me that Kevin Annett had published private emails. Now, when you are making a personal threat at a person, when you are invoking, as we know, corrupt governments that are acting highly illegally. And there was also other threats to, I think Robert David Steele threatened to have you removed from the public sphere. Now, that's, I actually pointed out to him that removal from the public sphere is not actually something I'm aware of that governments are allowed to engage in. However, of course, this is precisely what they want to engage in.
Secret tribunals administrative tribunals can do that under Homeland Security laws now, which they have in England as well. So he's referring to secret government there. He's saying our bodies. And just a little point on that, when he's outraged that I published these private things, it is so deja vu. It's exactly when the United Church was throwing me out in a kangaroo court. That's exactly what they said to me. They said, Kevin, how dare you? You went to the media and you described what we're doing to you. This secret show trial where we're stripping you of your profession without any due cause or evidence or anything. You weren't supposed to talk about that publicly. This is supposed to be, you're supposed to agree to your character assassination in private and never talk about it. And they were outraged. So it's the mentality of secret police and secret bodies, right? You're not supposed to talk about your own crucifixion, right?
Absolutely. I mean, basically, you're not allowed to talk about your own personal abuse. These psychopathic, I mean, a lot of them are psychopaths,
right.
But criminals and psychopaths, they want to isolate people and then descend down on them like a pack of hounds. And they actually get off on that. And as soon as they can't do that because the herd is alerted, they get extremely uncomfortable in their skin. Now, I have, the reason why I support you on this fully is because I have seen, Robert David Steele's replies to you. I personally have issues with this guy because of the way he treated the victim, who I know very well and who's got top evidence. So he's been already on my, watch out list. But now here's the email that he sent back to you. So I'm going to share my screen and actually show it so that people know exactly what the email was. Okay, so this is now the email by Robert David Steele in reply. Okay, so his email is pretty public, so I'm not revealing anything here. But
this is not to me. This is a response to ITCCS.
Oh yes, sorry, exactly. So this is Robert David Steele to ITCCS here, copying Sasha Stone and you. And he's saying, you are henceforth blocked as being an obvious lunatic with no legal standing. I mean, first of all, the question about legal standing, if you have an interview with Sarah Westall and behind your back, they are libeling you, you do have legal standing. So I would say that, Robert David Steele doesn't understand basic legal process. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he says, I will defer to the ITNJ as to what legal action, including referral of you as an individual, Mr. Kevin Annett, to the authorities for psychiatric evaluation and possible removal from this public sphere. I myself will have nothing further to do with you.
My question is, who is he talking to? Because it's addressed to the ITCCS as if it's me. Yeah. So I guess he's operating under this delusion that I'm the ITCCS, and so when they talk, I guess it's that delusion.
Exactly. I'm not sure if people can see the text highlighting that I'm doing, because maybe it's just sharing the window and not my cursor. But absolutely here. I mean, what I find extremely problematic is that let's remember what happened. You have an interview with Sarah Westall. They libel you behind your back. She sends you the email and probably asks, what the hell is this about? And then you reply probably to her. And then you also reply to the ITNJ, right?
That's right.
And then the ITCCS also replies with a statement, as they should, right, when one of theirs is attacked. And then this email comes back. So why exactly is there legal action when people use their right to reply? I find this highly problematic. Now, the other thing I find extremely problematic, and I'm now, if people can't see my highlighting, I'm looking at the end of the second line, where he says he wants to refer you as an individual to the authorities for psychiatric evaluation. Now, why? I mean, using your right to reply shouldn't trigger psychiatric evaluation unless Robert David Steele is a CIA operative and the CIA has used psychiatric, evaluation, so-called, to lock people away and brain mutilate them ever since MK Ultra, right?
He's a self-described former CIA officer.
Yeah, and I beg to differ on the former based on what I've seen. Yeah. And then the other thing is the possible removal from the public sphere. You just pointed out that is actually what secret courts and the deep state do. Now, one of the things I find massively problematic about this is that Robert David Steele claims to be somebody who's exposing the deep state. Yet again, he's threatening people with precisely the mechanisms of the deep state while claiming to be a former CIA operative. I mean, I'm sorry, something just doesn't add up here.
Well, it's classic what you do. You create a thing called the ITNJ that purports to be looking into crimes when in fact they're gathering information. And that's all their mandate says. We're just going to gather information and give it to the right authorities. Well, what authorities? Back to the church and government? Whereas our mandate is gathering the information and prosecute the institutions and people responsible. It says that right there at the, in the ITCCS background.
So I'm just gonna, I realized I promised to bring up the mandate. So let me just share my screen and bring it up so that we can settle this once and for all. So, okay, here's the screen. And the mandate can be found where?
ITCCS updates, the purple one on the right.
Yeah. I hope you can read this. These are the news.
Oh no, that's the updates. I'm sorry. You go to the ITCCS archive.
Archive here.
Go down a little bit.
Yeah.
Right there, in that box.
Our mandate. You're absolutely right. It says here, right? Our mandate to lawfully prosecute those people and institutions responsible for the exploitation, trafficking, torture, and murder of children past and present. And 2, to stop these and other criminal actions by church and state, including by disestablishing those same institutions. Yeah, so there's the mandate. And I guess this is one of the main accusations Sasha Stone had against you, that the ITCCS doesn't have a mandate. And you're absolutely right. Had he just checked the website, it would have been there. And besides, if he thinks it doesn't have a mandate, why doesn't he email you and ask about this, right?
Well, it's like the bully's tactic. You just punch up somebody really bad and hope because they're reeling, they're not going to respond and look logically at what's going on. It's just blitzkrieg tactics, which is what you do when you have no evidence and you're just trying to throw somebody off. And I think it's significant too, something we haven't mentioned yet, is they always do this just before a big campaign, a preemptive strike, because they know on April 14th to 21st, there's going to be people all over the world performing citizen arrests on Catholic priests, occupying churches, demanding churches stop tax exemptions towards these, or governments stop tax exemptions towards these churches. They're worried. And so naturally they want to throw us off right now.
Absolutely. I mean, as somebody who has experienced retaliation directly, in response to things, I mean, even in response to going some places or talking to people, I can certainly see that. Shall we quickly share the email from Sasha Stone, because at the end he was also referring to, government style actions. So let me just bring it up. Just a moment. I apologize. Typically, I would have the links ready, but I was screwed up by daylight savings time today. So I expected our meeting to be an hour later. So here we are. Share screen. Now that's the email. Let me blow it up. So this was forwarded to me because I should say I also requested the emails directly as evidence because I couldn't believe it myself, frankly. And then Kevin gave me the evidence. So here, this is Sasha Stone sending it to you this time, not to the ITCCS. He says, Mr. Annett, and then in copy the ITNJ registrar, the ITNJ Chief Justice, Dr. J. Walsh, the ITNJ Associate Justice, Dr. C. Cleverly, and now Robert David Steele is named as an ITNJ Commissioner, even though on the videos on the website he's actually named Chief Counsel. And given that he doesn't really understand law, I found that very problematic in the past. Okay. Which passages would you like to highlight in this letter?
Well, it's basically just a personal slagging, so it's kind of hard to find anything that's real.
I think the real.
I appear to have been masquerading as a court for 10 years. No. The ITCCS was formed 9 years ago, and the court was convened 7 years ago. So he's just talking out of the side of his mouth. And like, it's just assertions that aren't true, right? That he doesn't back up with evidence.
Your assertion that it was funded by the public purse is incorrect, without proof and defamatory.
Now, just to clarify, all we ever asked is, can you disclose where your funding is coming from? We just asked them the question, can you say who's funding you? And each time they respond by attacking. They don't make any reference.
I can actually confirm that because I asked about the funding as well, and they stonewalled it. Here he says, okay, so because at some point he says that he launched the court. Okay, I am presently a trustee emeritus. This is Sasha Stone talking, which means that once I launched the court and took a few serious bullets, I removed myself from having any power whatsoever. That is what one does, standing in honor, precisely in order to spotlight.
Honor. That's a funny word for him to use.
Precisely in order to, and so on. Now, okay, so he's saying that he spends lots of time counseling victims and so on. Okay, he says to state that the ITNJ was approached by your apparently spurious organization is a lie. Neither I nor any commissioner or trustee has received any such formal invite. And you say you have the emails, so that's
twice it was written.
Yeah. Now, I think if I remember correctly, the real nut came at the very end in the last paragraph. I'm scrolling through, and I hope people can later on stop the frame and read it at their leisure. But here it says, I think it's this last paragraph, on behalf of myself and by consent of the trustees of the ITNJ, okay, remember this, by consent of the trustees of the ITNJ, I firmly reject any association with you and your alleged organization. I question the veracity of your pedigree. What sort of statement is that? But okay. The probity of your alleged acts and the integrity of your intentions. If I hear from you again, or if you malign the ITNJ, whose undertakings are extraordinary, well documented, I may refer you to relevant authorities for mental health examination, as well as investigation for fraud and sedition.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
Sedition.
Yes.
Under British law means any act which might lead towards an insurrection against the British Crown.
Now, you know, wait. Say that very, very slowly again, you know, because so sedition is how exactly is that? People listen up, okay? Listen up very carefully.
Any act which may lead toward an insurrection towards the British Crown.
And I would like to add in brackets that the British Crown might also refer to the Crown Corporation, right? The Vatican.
Okay, so now, for him to accuse somebody of sedition, it's what an officer of the Crown does.
Yeah.
Right? And a seditious act means I've been planning physically to overthrow the Crown of England. Now, the closest I get to that is two things. We did indict the Crown of England as a criminal body, and I've named them as such for years publicly. Secondly, I've been part of a movement in Canada and England to establish sovereign republics, to disestablish the crown. So yes, I guess in crown law, that's a seditious act. I remember standing on Parliament Hill once in Canada in front of these Mounties with a megaphone saying, I believe the Crown of England should be abolished from Canadian soil and we establish a sovereign republic. The Mounties just kind of stood there and looked embarrassed. I said, I'm committing a seditious act. Arrest me. And nothing happened. So the very fact that they would raise that is the way somebody thinks is, what can we get this guy on?
Exactly.
He's advocated the end of the British Crown. So let's throw in sedition too. Like, why would a supposedly bona fide group looking into child abuse accuse another of sedition against the crown, right? It's mind-boggling that somebody would even say that. But anyway.
Well, one of the things that really gets me is that when you prod these people, eventually they reveal their colors, because nobody in their right mind, if somebody actually thought this guy's an outright lunatic and there's nothing to it, you wouldn't accuse him of sedition, because you'd think a lunatic against the British crown, which after all controls most parts of the world, would be nothing. So I think there's some, they have shown their hands. They have shown, first of all, you're right, they are crown agents, right? Crown agents. Now, Sacha Stone, is he American or is he British? I don't know.
I don't know, to be honest. Of course, you can work for the CIA and not be an American.
Yeah, absolutely. But so basically, if you're crown agents, you can both be CIA or MI6. Both are crown agents, right? Yeah. So either way, right? But you're right? If you're raising the point of sedition, you've showed, first of all, that you're crown agents. Second of all, as you said, you showed that you are systematically looking for court actionable offenses to destroy somebody. Right. And third of all, you really showed your colors, that you think you can get away with it. So you showed this incredible arrogance to threaten people, and remembering for what exactly, because you went public on Sarah Westall's show and you gave an interview. Why is that so threatening? And I think what's so threatening is that it got over 100 million views, and basically network effects blew up in their face, and there's no way to get the genie back into the box. I think that's
that, and what's been happening in Rome. And the dirt that the ITCCS had from this source in England, that MI5 memo had mentioned ITNJ and their involvement in it as basically a front organization. So all of that was going to come out. They did a preemptive strike, but they overshot because they were so scared. We saw the same thing in Canada. A classic example of this is years ago in 1995, after I was fired, we held a protest at the front door of the United Church office in Vancouver. And a Native woman showed up called Harriet Mahoney, and she spoke to the Vancouver Sun newspaper and said, I saw a little girl kicked to her death in the United Church school. First time a murder had been talked about. It made the headlines. The United Church head office, Virginia Coleman, the general secretary, immediately issues a press statement, said, we didn't know anything about it, and we didn't cover it up. Well, nobody had accused them of a cover-up. They immediately have this knee-jerk reaction. Well, we didn't do it, and even if we did, we didn't cover it up. It's like they don't think logically about how they're appearing. And this is a carbon copy, yet again, 24 years later, they're doing the same nonsense, right?
Well, this is too funny. I mean, exactly right, because before any accusations are levied, they reveal they have thought it through, and the two main accusations they are guilty of, they're already warding off by saying we haven't done anything. It's like
if it wasn't so tragic, it would be comical, right? Well, it is both tragic and comical.
Absolutely. Now, my question is, how much time do you have left? Because you have another interview to go to, and
10 minutes.
10 minutes, excellent. Because in 10 minutes, I basically just give me, if you indulge me just for a few minutes, I would like to bring up my communication to Robert David Steele, because I found it highly, highly problematic. And I should summarize that my issues with the guy is that one victim notified him. I mean, he claims to be a former CIA officer. He kind of masquerades as a whistleblower who is bringing down the deep state, right? But if you read his emails, I really have second thoughts about that. But one implanted victim contacted him and told him about how she's being raped and is being tortured with chip implants in the United States. And he basically blew her off with a one-liner saying, well, you don't need a court order to get out the chips. However, you will have to pay for it. There's nothing, I cannot help you. that was it, right? It was absolutely shocking and heartbreaking. And on top of that, which makes it even worse, is that it was factually wrong, because actually in real fact, victims do need a court order to get the chips out, because if they do not have a court order, the doctors refuse, or they don't take out the chips and operate anyway. So end up with a massive operation scar and the chip still stays in, right? And so on. And second of all, I don't see why victims have to pay for the removal of chips when the government put it in non-consensually. So both of his statements were absolutely wrong. And at that point, I realized this guy doesn't understand the law. He doesn't understand justice on top of that. And he's just really highly sociopathic, right? Now, what the email reply that I got, so I actually emailed, hang on, let me just bring it up, because I sent this email to Robert David Steele, and the email response I got was just breathtaking. Hang on. They've just frozen my my computer. Just a moment. I hope I don't lose the broadcast. Okay, let me get Robert Steele. Now, I am, and because of many things, I really have a very short temper with this guy. Here we are. Okay, so let me share my screen, and first I will show you my letter and the issues that I have raised, and then his reply, which just blew my mind. Okay, so let me share my screen. I think it's this. Okay, and one of the issues is that he's also sharing private email, but I'm sorry, these are public issues, and I actually consider him to be a CIA operative, and I consider him to be dangerous and subversive. So really, this is why I would like to alert the public. Okay, so there we are. Okay, let's start with my email to him. So I basically said, Dear Robert, I received a note from Kevin Annett quoting you and claiming to have been threatened by you with forced psychiatric evaluation and removal from the public sphere. Oh, damn it. Hang on. It went out of range. Oh, I see what happened. Sorry, I need to change this to landscape to be able to read it. Sorry, this is just, this is the delight of Google. Okay, here. Yes, so with forced psychiatric evaluation and removal from the public sphere. I'm writing to ask if this is true, because as a mutilation slave who gets tortured continuously with chip implants, and as a Holocaust victim who had 3 family members murdered by CIA/MI6 joint operations, I too am wondering what tribunal to present my case to. Yeah, open brackets, because he masqueraded as chief counsel, right, on the ITNJ. So I do have my worries. So I would like to know what the stance of the International Tribunal for Natural Justice is regarding Kevin Annett and the threats made against him by you and Sasha Stone, who presents himself as the founder of the ITNJ. As you know, the victims of the secret services get routinely put away into detention camps for brain mutilation with neurotoxins using the trash science of psychiatry. For this reason, I'm rather taken aback to hear such threats from someone who is, inverted commas, chief counsel for the ITNJ. Also, I'm most intrigued to read that the rather telling threat of removal from the public sphere. Now, open brackets, before you explained this, Kevin, I had no idea what that even meant.
Yeah, it's an in-house phrase meaning an administrative tribunal, where they're outside the rule of law. They're secret courts, secret jails.
Oh,
you know,
I mean, yeah. This is mind-blowing. Is that a novel type of sentence promoted by the British government? If so, it is running counter to the free speech laws and the anti-discrimination laws in the UK and EU. Finally, I would like to ask about the Jesuit/Masonic cartel signaling to be found all across the logo, website, and courtroom, especially the image accompanying the appeal to ratify the treaty that seems to show a contract signed in blood. Now, here I'm referring to the ITNJ, by the way. See attached presentations. Is that an indication for the origin of the substantial funds that the ITNJ commands? Or does the money indeed come from British intelligence, as Kevin Annett claims? And does this present a problem, given that all of the Jesuits, Masons, and British intelligence are transnational criminal organizations who routinely kill people, like those witnesses testifying to the ITNJ? Also, what exactly is the evidence that proves that Kevin Annett is a lunatic? It is important for me to know, given that I interviewed the man and I'm trying to set up common law tribunals following his model. Thank you for your help. So this was quite a loaded email. And I sent it to all the Intel whistleblowers at the same time. And he said Annett, who was defrocked for mental instability, is circulating private emails cautioning him. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I already agree with this first line, right? These are not private emails. These are, threats from organizations, right? Because Sasha Stone, for example, claimed that this was coming from the ITNJ. And both of them, were referring to the ITNJ for legal action against you. So these are not private emails. These are institutional emails. Sorry, did you want to add something?
Oh, well, that's astounding. He says that because the defrocked for mental instability, that's a new one. According to the United Church's own records, I was defrocked officially for, quote, disturbing the peace and welfare of the congregation, unquote. That's the only cause they ever gave. So is inventing retroactively a quarter century ago a new history, like, a Stalin rewrite of history. Suddenly Kevin was thrown out for being crazy.
Absolutely. And again, the mental instability is the CIA mechanism for putting away people, brain mutilating them and killing them. So I find this highly dangerous, right?
Yep.
That he puts in the mental instability and he slips it in without any evidence, and it's factually wrong. My understanding is that he is so out of control at this time that there's no alternative but to refer him to the authorities, right? And now my question is, out of whose control, right? I mean, what sort of control are we meant to?
Like I'm kind of, standing on street corners raving? Is that... They seem to be the ones out of control in their responses, so it's kind of interesting projection going on there.
Absolutely. And then he says, if he persists in circulating private emails, there will be no alternative but to make this the formal court case with all of the investigative material fully exposed to the public. I'd
appreciate if you could forward me his email.
Yeah, I shall. Because, I mean, it actually contains lies. A formal court case brought by a Canadian solicitor will, in addition, open up legal mandated discovery that will quickly establish with great specificity all of Annett's travels, expenses, detailed information about his donors, who can then be deposed as to whether they feel defrauded, etc. Okay. Now here, he already says will, so he already implies that he will hire...
Oh, it's in the works. Definitely in the works. And because RCMP have been asking around for me in Vancouver this week.
What is RCMP?
Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They're the ones I implicated in the residential school crimes. So they have a vested interest.
And now listen to this. I will not answer any more emails on this matter. Annett has a choice. I mean, this sounds like an ultimatum by a criminal syndicate, right? The mafia would say that to you. You've got the choice. Pay up or die. Shut up and stop circulating private emails and stop slandering ITNJ and individuals on the radio, or have his life turned inside out by due legal process. Isn't that nice? I literally, when I read that, I thought, oh my God, I just emailed a mafiosi here. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is Robert David Steele talking, who sounds like the deep state and claims to debunk the deep state, right?
Oh, it's amazing thuggery. It's amazing what people feel they can get away with, right?
Yeah. And then saying that to me, right? I mean, I feel violated and debased because he thinks he can just, steamroll me. But listen to this. The choice is his right now, today. Any further, by the way, this is a CIA script, okay? If you do a CIA interrogation, you're put on pressure and then you say, hey, it's your choice. You can get out of this pressure right now. So Robert David Steele actually inadvertently falls back into a CIA script, interrogation script. Mm-hmm. Any further evidence of his broadcast communications will assure that he will face legal action. And now listen to this, legal action in Canada with notice to UK, Belgium, Italy, Vatican, and US, as well as Australia and New Zealand. And then he said to me, please do not email me again or you will be marked as spam.
Well, if this was serious, do you think they'd be telling me, because obviously they know I'm going to read this, why would they play their hand like that? It's just intimidation.
know. I mean, maybe because they also know my personality. Maybe Robert David Steele wants to pick a fight with me, because what I replied to him is, that's interesting, Robert. How come you're listing these countries? Because first of all, the point of strife seems to be between Kevin Annett, who is a Canadian citizen, and the ITNJ people, right? Sasha Stone and you, who, I mean, Robert David Steele is American. Sasha Stone is either American or British, I don't know, or Canadian, who knows, right? But there's only two countries possibly involved. So how come Belgium, Italy, Vatican, Australia, and New Zealand are in that? And the only way I can match up these countries is that Canada, UK, US, Australia, and New Zealand are the Five Eyes Intel crime syndicate. Yeah. Italy and Vatican are basically the mafia and the Vatican crime cartel, and Belgium is the headquarters of NATO, which some people argue is a Nazi organization. So it fits right into this mold.
Catherine, there's I've actually, in 5 minutes, I've got this other interview, but I do want to take this up again, because that sentence by him, Annett has a choice. Shut up. Oh, you went off screen. Shut up or face dire consequences. That's actually what the United Church said to me when I walked out of their kangaroo court defrocking hearing. They said, you will now face dire consequences if you leave the room. Sure enough, lost family, job, livelihood, got blacklisted. So there aren't idle threats going on here. They are outraged, because only people who are outraged and threatened talk like that. So it's proving, kind of in summary, that what we're doing is hitting something very explosive, having to do with the Mormon-Vatican connection, this upcoming week of action in April, the Bergoglio sidelining, and how it's highlighting even more the Ninth Circle. They probably read the riot act to him and said, get rid of this guy now, and scare him into backing off. I mean, that's the only thing that can explain it, unless they're all lunatics. I mean, that's the other thing, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, I have to say that the email I read out was something that Robert David Steele sent to me. Now, I don't consider that to be private email, because it contained threats made via me to Kevin Annett. So I want to make it public, because I actually felt that this was basically threats from a mafiosi, from a criminal.
He's threatened my life. He's threatened my life and my liberty and good name, and it's a criminal action what he's doing. He's inciting people into criminal conspiracy over the public internet, and that's amazing for anyone in any kind of position to think they can get away with. So
absolutely. You know, at this stage, I would really like to thank you. If you don't mind, Kevin, if you have to go, I would like to continue the broadcast just to show people the presentation I have done about the ITNJ and its cartel signaling, to put my opinion into context. I mean, you have nothing to do with that. I just would like to bundle it into the same broadcast in case people are interested. Would you be happy for me to do that? It's just about the two presentations.
Please do, and please send me a link right away. And especially a copy of that email. It's damning evidence against him that will backfire on him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish, I basically, what I'm about is I don't like that people go around threatening others. I am entirely for free speech, and this was way out of order. So thank you very much, Kevin, for being on the show and clarifying these things. And I'm looking forward to, you know, hearing from you soon. And
we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye for now, Kevin.
Bye.
So what you have to do, I think, is click the little red phone, and then you get disconnected. And I hope I continue. So bye for now. You seem to have frozen. Let's see if you guys can still hear me. Hang on. Okay, so let's see. Can you guys hear me in the chat? Yep. Hang on. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, great. It looks like you guys can see me, and this is very, very encouraging, because sometimes when I have these changes, then they sabotage the broadcast. Okay, let me just stabilize things here. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to this. I would like to clarify that it was extremely important for me to make this public today. I do not want to be intimidated by Robert David Steele about, references to private emails, and then he's using private email communication to make substantial threats involving governments and, nebulous, dark secret organizations, right? I completely disagree with that. And I also want to use the principle that the other, I personally think, genuine intel whistleblowers have raised over and over, which is that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Now, you can have sunlight only if you reveal the exact precise words so that people can make their own judgments, okay? And I genuinely thought that this was way out of order. And as I said, I already had, and I have communicated this to the people I worked with, I found it far out of order how Robert David Steele had brushed off that victim. I thought it was not recognizing the genocide that is going on, not recognizing, I mean, excuse me, if you are, an American and other Americans are being mutilated to death by the state and you don't give a damn about that, you can't really be considered to be a leadership figure. I don't think you could be trusted with tying your shoelaces, frankly, right? Let alone with leading any sort of campaign. And I absolutely hate it. The other thing I really hate is when people masquerade and pretend that there's a takedown of the deep state, but in actual fact, there isn't. In actual fact, it's a big fucking Masonic fraud. Okay, this is what makes me extremely angry, because every single time there's a Masonic fraud, there's a Masonic genocide being covered up. And typically the Masonic genocide is targeted at the weakest in society. These are disabled people, these are pensioners, these are children, and these are women, right? And as I'm talking already, there was an impact on the shielding just to my left, a big thud impact. So yes, they immediately retaliate. As soon as I make such statements, they start gunning me in the head, try to give me a stroke or brain damage and stuff like that, because they just cannot cope. But I'm sorry, they're doing this anyway, so I'm not going to stay quiet. Now, on to the ITNJ, because some of you maybe wonder, why do I bother trying to reinvent the wheel if there's the ITNJ there and it has great people, which it has recruited a lot of great people. Why am I not just recommending that people just file their evidence there? It's nice and easy, we're done with it, and, bon voyage. Well, the reason why I haven't done this all this time, even though I genuinely, deeply like and revere a lot of the people who have become commissioners and who have worked with the ITNJ. I completely support those, but I'm very scared that they're being walked into with the promise of great things. They're being walked into a British Intel CIA trap, okay? And every single time the intelligence agencies do something, there is prolific cartel signaling. So I decided to look at the cartel signaling on the ITNJ page. Now, I think I have this problem today that I can't share my screen properly the way I want to. I can only share windows, and then you cannot see me highlighting any text. So I have to do it in a bit more wordy fashion. But one of the things I would like to take you to is a presentation I have prepared. A long time ago, actually. The presentation is from the beginning of 2018, and I have emailed it to people so I can prove that I have raised these points a long, long time ago, and they are independent of Kevin Annett or anything to do with the ITNJ right now. Okay, I've also sent my concerns to all the people who I know and respect, who are working on the ITNJ. So they are all aware of my concerns. This is nothing new, but I have never really talked about it publicly. So let me see, I can't share my entire screen as a new feature of wonderful YouTube, but okay, let me share this presentation. So there are two presentations. This is the first one. I hope you can see this. I hope I can make this. How do I make this big screen again? Like this. Oops. I hope you guys can see it. I pray you can see this. So I started analyzing this thing from the point of view of cartel signaling, which to those people who have never studied the crime cartel might seem like esoteric tea leaf reading. Okay. But actually, the more you deal with this crime cartel, the more you realize that it has very deep content that sometimes actually tells you, it cuts to the chase. So you can sometimes get an insight into what's really going on, even if you're just a layperson and you don't have access to high-level intel, okay? And that's because the reason why it is like that is because the crime cartel needs to communicate to all its members, okay, far and wide, internationally, what's actually going on. If they don't do that, they will end up in massive confusion. And if you are a big, sprawling global organization like the Crown Corporation is, and I emphasize the Crown Corporation because it's separate from the British royal family, okay? Now, the Crown Corporation is global. It comprises, I think, 40% of the international companies. It comprises the Vatican Bank and a bunch of other things. It's basically a big global cartel. You have your employees, and they're sometimes not the smartest. So they had to develop a very simple language where they can, put recognition plaques everywhere that the insiders would recognize, but everybody else would be oblivious. Okay, so in other words, the insiders immediately, just by looking at it, even if they are thick as two planks, they can just look at a logo and understand what's going on. Okay, that's the idea behind cartel signaling. And in a big organization like that, that is, trying to be covert, there's a real need for covert signaling. Okay, so they can't really do away with cartel signaling that easily, which is why it's everywhere. Okay, so now with the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, I already started hicking up about the logo. All right, this is a new organization. It can devise its own, logos as it likes. Yet they decided to start with 8 satanic pentagrams, which are here. Okay, why do you need those satanic pentagrams? Why 8? Okay, what's the purpose behind that? Then, of course, you have the crop circle here, a circle with the crop. Now, that inside the cartel is a symbol for harvesting. Okay, cyclical harvesting, the cycle of harvesting here. Okay, so you have the harvesting, and then inside you have 8 satanic pentagrams. And I'm not sure if you can see, but in the faint background, you actually have the sun symbol with the wonky sun rays. Now, the wonky sun rays are the logo of the Jesuits, and it's a reference to sun worship. Now, why the flying F does an international tribunal that pretends to be independent have the Jesuit logo whack in its center, right? Because if I just use cartel signaling, right, and read this inside out, what I read from the logo is that this is the Jesuits, right, which are the Vatican military intel. Okay, so this is the global intel conglomerate working, right, for 8 satanic entities in harvesting, right? And they harvest through the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, which in turn has these very, very dangerous looking cogs that are actually grinding cogs, okay? So towards the outside, this is going to grind something. All right. Now, my summary is this is satanic harvesting for the Vatican by grinding outsiders, like cogs in a machine, right? Which is part of a much larger machine. So these cogs, this unit fits into a bigger machine. Can you see it? Right? When you put it together, a message emerges. Right? A very, very clear and unmistakable message. Now, of course, I wouldn't base complete condemnation just on a logo like that, because sometimes inadvertently people who are not cartel insiders will use symbols that they see all around themselves, thinking that they are just mainstream symbols, not realizing that actually the reason it's all around them is because the cartel is all around them. Okay, so this is not enough for me to condemn this organization. But then the Tribunal for Natural Justice has another logo, and that is this squiggle wiggle with this gray thing, and that's the logo. It has this, and then the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. Now, that thing is an artichoke, right? Some claim it's the pineal gland, right? But the pineal gland doesn't have a stem, right? But artichokes do have a stem. So this, I'm sorry, it's an artichoke. Now, the artichoke is the key symbol of the mafia. Why? Because it has many, many layers and the juicy heart. Now here you can see one, you know, cut up, but you can find much better images online about this, where you can see this artichoke cut into half, and you will see that there are literally hundreds of layers. When you eat one of these, taking off one leaf after the other, you'll be working for 2 hours, right? And then in the end, you get through to the juicy heart. Now, that's why the mafia and the Vatican crime cartel use the artichoke. Now, this thing, this infinity sign is the symbol for perpetual cycling, for revolution and perpetual churn, right? It's an endless process. It's what drives the Vatican crime cartel engine, right? But you also see 2 hearts, right? Like this little thing has a little bump there. You can see it on the original logo much better. This is double hearts. So a heart in 2 opposite directions. This is again the Masonic duality. So their hearts point into 2 different directions. Do you get it? So in other words, when I'm analyzing this logo, I get perpetual churn between 2 opposing sides into eternity as breeding ground on which the Vatican mafia thrives, because this mafia artichoke is growing out of this perpetual churn. Do you see it? It's right in your face when you know how to read it. And again, the input I need is always the same, okay? Cycles and infinity symbols are the perpetual revolutions of countries that they're going through, like the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, blah, 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 Orange Revolutions, you know, and then they thrive on that. And that's what the mafia grows out of. So the artichoke is a symbol, the infinity sign is a symbol, and the hearts, opposing hearts, are the standard symbol. And it's always the same, okay? Now, what really got it for me was, this is a screenshot from the website, and I'll also show you the original. Here's the web address, okay? On the front page, if you scroll down, there's one section called Ratify the ITNJ Treaty. And it says, add your voice to the call for natural and just order on Earth. However, when I look at this, it looks like a contract signed in blood. And it's definitely their paper and not a stock photo, because it has the ITNJ logo on it. So they have a normal signature, and then they have thumbs with blood on them. And then sometimes you could think, oh, what if this is a seal? You know, sometimes they had red wax, and you would use it, you know, to put your signature on. But if you're using your thumbprint, why would you put your signature, right? And given that with the abuse of children and the abuse of church and state, you are literally talking about blood oaths, okay? And blood and the blood of children plays a prominent role. So unless you're completely psychopathic, right, you would never, ever, ever, ever put anything that looks like blood stains onto anything you call your treaty, right? Do you get it? When I saw this, I was actually shocked. Okay, now I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is, first of all, I'm gonna check if you guys are still with me, okay, because I kind of, in the back of my mind, I already expect that that's the point when I'm gonna be taken down, because I'm really going to the core of it. But it looks like you're still there. Okay, my mind, right, you guys can still hear me. Thank you, that's great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go through and show you where you can find this live on the ITNJ website as it appears now, right? It's not just a presentation I just made up with stock images. No, these were screenshots from the website, as you can still find it now. So let me share my screen and show the application window. Okay, there we are. So if you go to www.itnj.org, so itnj.org, you get to this website. Now, you will find the logo up here. That's the artichoke on the top left, growing out of perpetual revolution of opposing hearts. That's top right. Here, it just flashed up what I consider to be a contract signed in blood, right? And the previous image showed the ITNJ logo. Now it also shows the sea in the background and the sunset, okay? or well, actually, you don't know if it's a sunset or sunrise. Let me just go back. Now, the sea I found, this, is this ice actually? It looks like water to me, but actually, now that I look more carefully, maybe it's ice. Maybe it's ice. I don't know. Now, if you come to your own judgments, because the sea is sometimes referred to as a kind of spelling mistake, tongue-in-cheek reference to the Holy Sea, even though that's written differently. But when you have ice, you know, icy fields, this is where children, for example, would find themselves as they're trying to navigate their world, you know, surrounded by pedophiles. Suddenly everything around you is cold, inhospitable, and so on, right? So in other words, this image, I read that, you know, people are in this inhospitable world, and then, you know, coming down from above is the Jesuit sun, right? And this logo. Okay, so let's just click through all the images here. You can see this logo on the left that I analyzed, the second logo. The next image is the sky. Again, have you been the victim of human trafficking or child sex slavery? You can again see the mafia logo growing out of perpetual revolution. This is the one I just analyzed. Here you have the blood contract. And the final one is, again, just the same thing. All right, so this is all on the front page. Here's the vision, the mission. You can look at this at your leisure. Here's the screenshot I took from the website. Okay, that's the one I just analyzed. So you can see that this really is from the website as it stands. Okay, now I would like to show you another website, and I hope this shows. This is now the ITNJ Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Human Trafficking and Child Sex Abuse. Now, the first image that meets you, okay, so this is actually the specific commission for inquiry into human trafficking and child sex abuse, okay? So that's like the original site down here has many, many cases, okay, open cases and closed cases, right? You can navigate it here, right? Unified Common Law Grand Jury of Southern Africa, right? Directions hearing and so on, right? So they are also very, very public. That's great, you know? So they've got many cases, and then they've got commissions and commissioners. Now, oh yes, this is what I wanted to show you. Now, when you look to the commission, this is the presiding judge, Sir John Walsh. This here is, again, still named as Chief Counsel Robert David Steele. Now, as I just explained in my previous emails, the emails I've just shown previously, this guy, Robert David Steele, has no legal understanding, right? None what the hell soever. And I pointed this out in today's broadcast. So how the hell is he chief counsel without any legal training? I mean, who agreed to this makeup of people? But then when you get to the judicial commissioners, right, you get here, for example, this bishop, okay? He's the former bishop of Jerusalem, okay? So what's his claim to fame then? You have, here you have a lady, Dune Alexander, awarded an MBE for her work in health sovereignty, right? Then you've got Karen Hutzbau, right? So a psychotherapist and criminologist, and also on child sex abusers and child murderers. I think she does some real kick-ass work, and I respect her a lot based on what I've seen from her. There is the Honorable Dr. Cynthia McKinney. I also respect her a lot based on what I've seen. I don't really know Vanita Patel. There's Justin Walker. And then there are technical commissioners, right? You've got Stephen E. Arnold, Arnold Information Technology, author of Google Trilogy and Cyber OS Int, Next Generation Information Access, Dark Web Notebook, and so on. Okay, so this is an IT guy. And then you've got William Binney, right? Now, I really respect him a lot. I really think that he's highly, you know, of high integrity. And then this guy I don't really know yet. Arno Reusser is open source. It's about open source intelligence, and pioneer and founder of pioneer and founder of the Dutch military intelligence OSINT service. Right, today CEO of Reusser Information Service. Oh, nice. Now, Dutch military intelligence. That's interesting. Would that be the people who implanted, for example, Melanie Richan? Right? Right? Or maybe not. Sometimes these techie people don't know what the child abusers and sex abusers and the intelligence agencies are up to, right? I mean, we know from William Binney that there's a massive difference between him as the technical director of NSA and, for example, so-called General Michael Hayden, right? Who is just a complete polar opposite. Okay, so anyway, all I wanted to say is that the commissioners, right, they are very good people there. But here at the top, the presiding judge, I don't know who he is, and chief counsel, are you kidding me? Really? So, okay, now that's the setup. Now, when you get to the this commission, what strikes you first is this image, and I had to look up what precise bird it is, and I think these are white peacocks. They are extremely rare, okay? Now, why on earth would you have two white peacocks facing each other as your logo? What the hell have peacocks to do with human trafficking and child sex abuse? Okay. Now, the other thing is they call it the Westminster seating. So their courtroom, as I found out, is somewhere in Westminster, the swankiest and most Masonic area, right? Now, here in the background, you have a Masonic building that up there, I'm not sure if you can see, but you probably can't see my cursor. But if you look at the building in the background, just next to the top little spike, there are two urns, okay? If you look carefully, you can see two urns. Now, that is a Masonic symbol for human sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen. So I really don't think that this is the right sort of backdrop for an inquiry into human trafficking and child sex abuse. But one of the things that really struck me was the symbolism of the white peacocks, okay? Now, if you go down, you can hear testimonies. By the way, there are also testimonies about people who are targeted individuals, right, who have been implanted and so on. So this effort per se is absolutely laudable, and they are putting out public testimonies, and I actually consider the public testimonies to be one of the great services, right, to mankind. Now, one of the things I'm absolutely not sure about is if you click on this, right, and maybe there's a way to bring it up in, I'm not sure if you see this, I've opened the video, and in the video, I wanted to show you, I hope you see this, because this might count as a separate window. I just clicked on the video in the middle of the screen, and then if you open it up and go to 6 minutes, 22 seconds, you can see a close-up of the judge, and he's actually sitting, I kid you not, on a Vatican crime cartel chair that has both or all three of the double pillars, right? Little symbols representing the artichoke on top of it, and the columns are representing the snake, the same snake columns that are up on the Vatican. So I don't know who the hell donated or procured this golden chair, but it actually spells out Vatican crime cartel right there. So if anything, that's an unfortunate choice. And I also would like to point out that the black and white garb of the judge is actually Masonic uniform. It's black and white. And this is why Catholic priests and Catholic nuns and the Masons are running around in black and white, everybody, because it's the Masonic tiling, okay? Black and white, the duality. So I really don't know what the hell this is about. And also the bishop to his right, sorry, to his left, but on the right-hand side of the screen, is sitting there in bright purple in his bishop's guard. Now, purple is also the Illuminati color, okay? So I'm looking at, and by the way, he's got a big fat cross around his neck, and that is the Swiss cross, and 4 little Swiss crosses in each quadrant of the Swiss cross. So, I mean, this image just absolutely blows my mind, and I'm wondering what the hell? How the hell can people possibly devise this, right? I mean, surely the people of high integrity involved did not devise these logos and have not, procured this chair. But to me, it signals that whoever has procured the chair and made the logo really knows about the symbols of the cartel and have plastered it all over this entire show. Okay, now, this is just the, and by the way, there are excellent testimonies. There's a testimony from John Wedger here, the police whistleblower, many other absolutely top people. So please use this, system judo it by listening to the testimonies live, okay? And listening to the people directly. Here are also the commissioners, right? You can listen to them as well. Very important. And then here is the two people that we were talking about earlier. It is Sasha Stone on the left. And I would like to point out that it just so happens he's wearing a black and white, pinstripe suit, which again is a Masonic internal recognition symbol. This is why the London bankers were known to have worn these black and white stripy suits. You know why? Because they were all fucking Masons working for the Vatican crime cartel in the City of London. This is where this fashion comes from. All right? It's not because men naturally like to run around head to toe in stripy outfits. Okay, it was a cartel recognition symbol. And here is Sasha Stone. And it just so happens that he, out of all the things he could have worn that day, he just wears the Masonic recognition symbol. I mean, it blows my mind. Next to him on the right is Robert David Steele, again, wearing a Masonic outfit, all in black and white. And in fact, he's wearing some, is that a legal robe? Because it looks like the gowns we used to wear in Oxford. I recognize the puffy shoulders and this kind of structure to it. So maybe it's a legal gown, but let's remember, this guy, I don't think has any legal training. All right. So why is he wearing a legal robe? So these are the questions. And I was amused to see the coffee mug between these two people. And even that is black and white. It's like two Masons drinking Masonic coffee. You just can't make the shit up. And unfortunately, it just so happens that the two water bottles left and right look like Masonic pillars. I'm not sure if this shot was arranged like that, but it ended up like that. And with the Masonic coffee in the middle and the two Masonic pillars either side of these two guys who I strongly suspect to be Masons, this image was just comical for me. Okay, but anyway, let's go back to the very top. So we have now reached the end here. These are just the testimonies. But by the way, if you go to Commemorative E magazine, one of the things that shocked me is that this thing is rather glossy. Okay, let's see. I hope I'm not going to crash this entire show now. Okay, let me just click. Can you guys see? Yes, you guys can see this window. Perfect. So look at this, right? Doesn't this look like a lot of money? It even makes a sound when you're flicking through the magazine. Doesn't this just smell of, I don't know, I want to say Rothschild money, but it could also be just MI6 money or Vatican bank money. Look at this. Swanky. Okay, now this is really cute and very interesting, right? But something tells me that most people-led endeavors don't, they just don't snap all this stuff into place that quickly. It's a bit, it's like being too clever by half. It's just too rich by half to be credible for me as a people's endeavor. It literally smells of establishment money. That's my problem with it. Okay, I mean, just flick through this and everything about this. Okay, everything. And everywhere you've got the mafia logo, and all of these people who haven't learned to read cartel signaling place their faces under the logo of the mafia. Oh, by the way, I've just spotted this. Can you see introduction to the ITNJ, and you have a peacock at the top? Let's see. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Can I make this bigger? There. Okay. Can you see the oops. Crikey. Can you see the peacock? Here, the little purple peacock. So the peacock is a very important symbol because they stuck it on when they said introduction to the ITNJ. Now, I ask, given the peacock is so important, what does the peacock represent, guys? What exactly does the peacock represent? because it's so prominent, okay, it is absolutely everywhere. Now, I've just looked at the chat, and somebody pointed out that the website of Robert David Steele is phi-beta-iota.net. Let me just bring up the site, because that's another thing that really got me. Okay, so thank you for the person who pointed this out. Let's just because it's current, let me just share my screen and show you that website, because it is important. That's another thing I have against Robert David Steele. This is his website, people. Okay, so you can see him here, right? An image of him, and here's the hashtag unrig and caps, the unrig hashtag that he's talking about. Here's a video of him. So this stuff is his site, right? His image is plastered everywhere. But when you look at the URL, it's phi-beta-iota.net. Now that is FBI in Greek. And FBI is masquerading as domestic intelligence / police, but is actually an international network. Okay, so fbi.gov. There's the FBI. If you go to contact us, you can see what I mean, because you'll get a world map with, yes, higher density in the US, but look, these are all the FBI field offices. The FBI is a global network. It is not federal. It is as federal as FedEx and the Federal Reserve. It's a global network. Now, when somebody calls it FBI.net in Greek kind of fraternity style, you know, nomenclature, that kind of creeps me out, I have to say. Right, so this is really, really disconcerting. Now, let me share some other things about the ITNJ that really made me hiccup, because, you know, I mean, you can say what you like about cartel signaling, right? You can say, oh, this is just tea leaf reading, or this is just, you know, something that's maybe not so important. But for me, the real proof of its validity is when you can apply the same handful of symbols, or maybe with a few additions, and they create a coherent picture that then is borne out by evidence. That if you keep doing that, and if you keep being successful with it, that is the test of the method. Okay, now let me share another presentation I did about the ITNJ to do with this particular commission into human trafficking, and it's analyzing the peacocks, which I personally found were very, very you know, important. Okay, so here's the new presentation. I hope you can see it full screen. So this is the image. This is a screenshot of the image that we've seen, and in red you can see me point out the things that I have pointed out previously. So you have, first of all, the sacrificial urns at the top. Is something I would certainly would avoid putting on when you are trying to talk about human trafficking and child sex abuse, because it also includes human sacrifice, otherwise known as murder. Okay, so you would not want to have sacrificial urns in the image. Then you have the Masonic architecture with the dome of power and the oculus at the top, I would like to point out. And then this mirroring of two opposing sides is typically used as a symbol for two-facedness and mind control. Okay. Now, I also said that the peacock symbolism is so very prominent, right, and so unusual that it warrants further inquiry. Now, I was looking around for cartel signaling that has the white peacock, and one of the things I found was a music video by Joseph Kahn. Now, for insiders, I mean, not cartel insiders, for investigators who are insiders and understand how the crime cartel works, I pointed out in the past that Joseph Kahn makes a lot of music videos that would typically contain a lot of cartel signaling, and in a lot of cases advertise the military technology, for example, eye implants that we find in victims. So I think Joseph Kahn is a cartel insider. Now, this screenshot is from his music video called Dinero for Jennifer Lopez. And at 1:38, the white peacock appears. And here, the white peacock in this music video is found in a kitchen, You can tell it's a kitchen by looking to the right, because you will see a kitchen sink with 2 taps, and it is actually on a serving table. So this is a smaller table, typically at the end of the table or on the side of the room, where the food would be put on display. And then, you know, typically your butler or your serving staff would serve up the food for everybody individually sitting at the table. So this is how serving tables work, okay? Now, on the serving table, you find a white peacock. So what this means is that this is food on display for consumption, okay? Now, when you're talking about human trafficking and you use the symbol of food on display for consumption, it is rather ominous, okay? But of course, this is just a random music video, you might argue, even though white peacocks are very rare, you know, and very unusual. So let's look for something else. Now, I was trying to go away from music videos, and I dug out the Daily Mail, which I typically can rely on for prolific cartel signaling. So when I searched for white peacock, an article came up from 2014, May 2014, and the article reads, the title on Google was "Shocking Moment, a polar bear ate a rare white peacock after it flew into its enclosure." Now, look again how you have the process of eating the peacock right there, all right? When I looked at the article itself, I mean, first of all, you know, the Daily Mail being a national newspaper writing about one animal eating another, okay, I mean, you can do it. It's a bit gory and pointless, but they put out this article. But when it's about stuff like that, I always suspect it's actually cartel signaling. Now, in the top header of the article, there was already indication for cartel signaling, because the top of the article read, "The moment a polar bear caught and ate a peacock that flew into the wrong enclosure. Warning, graphic content." Now, unless you want to shock and put out a really gory message, why exactly would you show people the image when the polar bear has its jaws around the head of the peacock? Why would you want to put in graphic content? There is no need. There's no new information gained from it, right? Unless you're psychopath and you're getting off on murder. And you know that you're writing to other psychopaths who get off on gore and murder. Then actually anything that has graphic content is a bit of a tease. It's a bit of a, you know, knob titillation. And then when you read the text, it says, "Bird was snared at new enclosure inside Vienna's Schönbrunn Zoo. Lynn, the polar bears, had been in its habitat for just a couple of days." Now, if you read carefully, okay, so the polar bear had been in its habitat very recently, okay, always think in terms of what could be the second message here. Are they perhaps announcing a murder? A covert murder here, you know, in the Daily Mail? Is that what's going on? After grabbing the bird, and by the way, bird is also code for woman, okay? So the double meaning would be after grabbing the woman. All right, so here it says, after grabbing the bird in its mouth and ripping it, she ran around the cage. Okay, her partner, Razno, tries to share the treat, but Lynn runs away from him. And for me, the most telling thing was, other white peacocks now stand on the wall calling for its missing pal. Do you also note the odd grammar and the subtle grammar mistakes? So spelling and grammar mistakes are always a telltale sign that there's a cartel message, because they kind of show that this is not the real message, there's something else. You know, they kind of break the image a little bit to give people the heads up. But this sentence of other white peacocks now standing on the wall calling, and why it's missing pal? They probably mean for their missing pal, right? Now, to me, that was a cartel insider symbol, insider message saying we have killed somebody who was a white peacock, as in a rare, you know, rare somebody. And now the you know, relatives or the associates of the person we murdered are now just standing there calling for their missing pal. That's how I read this shit. Okay. because I have seen so much nonsensical articles being put out by the British press. And then I realized, oh shit, they're talking about human sacrifice, right? Remember my case with Inspector Miskell, right, who was corresponding with me from Greater Manchester Police, for me to then find out that no Inspector Miskell exists at Greater Manchester Police, right? And then Inspector Miskell being involved in a death that was celebrated in the British press as the Great Sacrifice. Okay, if it's those people who have watched the Techno Crime Fighters 4, I will remember that. But it's basically because of shit like that I have cottoned on to the fact that the British press is putting out announcements of targeted murders and human sacrifices and human murder in the press. Okay. Now, in this instance, with the white peacocks, I consider the symbolism of the white peacock as the rare bird being ripped apart by a predator, right, that mimics its white appearance. So in other words, both the polar bear and the peacock are white. Now, you know the expression of white hat, right? So it looks like the peacocks are rare birds that are to be eaten. And in this particular incident, they are being eaten by somebody who mimicked their appearance, who also mimicked to be white. Now, white represents the good side traditionally, so this hints at subversion through infiltration. This was my comment on this, right? So when you go to this back, you realize that if you read the cartel signaling, it says that this is the presentation of prey to predators for sacrifice, right? So the white peacocks are on display in front of a backdrop of a Masonic architecture that is advertising human sacrifice, right? And they are displaying themselves before being devoured. Do you understand? So you might think this is totally cuckoo, but when I just read the sentence off the screen in terms of cartel signaling, this is precisely what it says. All right? Now, going back to the ITNJ, what this means in real terms, so what does that mean, you know, in practice? What it means in practice, right, is that what the website announces, let's just look at it together again so that it really solidifies in your mind what I'm trying to say. If you go back to the website, what this means is that the ITNJ is advertising under the, you know, mafia logo of continuous revolution and hearts pointing in two directions. It is advertising here rather prominently that they are mind-controlled rare birds on display, right? On display. So in other words, for the cartel members, you're meant to get off on this, on these rare birds who are willing to come forward. You're meant to get off on this, and they are on display for you. But don't worry, the cartel's going to devour them. And there you can see the cog already, you know, rolling towards their head, right? Because this person is a victim here, right? Can you see it now? Right? So in other words, what the cartel tells us is that, look, we've put these people on display, but don't worry, they will be devoured. They are for your consumption. Okay? Now, this is why, and by the way, the presentation, I'm not sure if you could see the bottom line, the presentation had the, I wrote it for the JIT, for the investigation, and it has a JIT mark of 2000, so the 10th of January 2018. This is when I started writing this presentation. And the pages that I've shown you are basically pages 94, right, out of 107. So this was part of a very long presentation about cartel signaling and many, many examples. But this is basically why at the beginning of 2018, I had my serious concerns about the ITNJ. Of course, I see the very high profile people who are there as commissioners, who I respect a lot, right? But what I'm really concerned about is, where the hell does the money come from? Who made the logo? Who made that flashy flick through little mag, right? Who has made the Masonic chair, right? And who has invited, not the commissioners, because they seem to really be based on actual, you know, subject knowledge, but who has invited the judge? and the chief counsel, right? Like, who are they, and what's the remit? How does it work? Because I mean, I don't really see, you know, a grand jury. I see a bunch of people. Are they the jury? Are the commissioners the jury? Or how does it work? I just don't understand. And are the judgments, are there judgments at all? Are there convictions? Can the convictions be enforced, or are the convictions of a nature that you can ask a national government to enforce them, right? These are all questions that haven't been answered to me, right? And when I questioned Robert David Steele, he also didn't. I mean, I sent him the 2 presentations that you guys have seen, and he doesn't comment on the cartel signaling. Not a word. He just says, if you email me again, you will be marked as spam. I mean, first of all, I couldn't care less, right? I really couldn't care less. But second of all, he is masquerading as chief counsel, and then I'm asking questions about the very fundament of the legitimacy of the ITNJ, and he blows me off, right? Do I find that confidence-inducing? No. Does that move me to recommend the ITNJ to other victims? Oh, F no, right? Not when you have those freaking mind control peacocks, on your front page, right? Have the commissioners chosen the peacocks? No, I don't think so. I don't think that had anything to do with the website, but I did send it to those people who I knew, and I didn't get any comments. So I hope they are processing it somehow internally. And of course, when you have something that is really crap, you always have the hope of recapturing it through infiltration and making it to do the right thing, right? Now, in this case, it could be recaptured by saying, yeah, okay, we are on display, but if we are on display, we don't give a damn about you cartel people. What we really care about is network effects. By being on display, right, even if we count as prey to them, we are activating other people who are like us. But then the only way to make it work is to activate people who are willing to come forward and stand next to you. And should anything happen to you after you've given your testimony, should you have an aneurysm, a heart attack, should you just, come to harm, should something catastrophic happen to you, should your businesses be destroyed, well, it's the duty of those people to back you up and ask hard questions, right? That's the only way to make it work. Now, I really have to say they have increased the shots into my skull and basically the chip torture. My head is absolutely cooking. So I'm really, I need to sign off, and this presentation is probably long enough. Now I'm going to throw a quick, do you see the crown? I don't actually see the crown. Hang on, I have to look back. If you guys can point out where the crown is, I would be very grateful, because, sometimes I do miss things. Okay. Okay. By the way, I also apologize, because sometimes your comments don't show up, and I have to go through afterwards and then basically allow the comments, right? So I'm going through. Okay, somebody asks, what about the peacocks also representing snakes because of their long necks? In principle, this could be, but then yeah, maybe if I look at it like 2 snakes, that could be, but then the peacocks are just so vulnerable. But then the other thing is, if I'm running with your analysis of 2 snakes, right, actually being snakes and masquerading as innocent people, right, as kind of like the white polar bear, you have a point, because with every peacock you only see one eye, right? So you see this orangey green eye. So that's also very good interpretation. And so there are many ways to interpret it, and I think the real test is to go through all different interpretations you can think of, take it as a kind of warning, and then see what's being borne out by evidence. And this is why, it's because I analyzed the ITNJ, because I was really uncomfortable with this and where the money came from. I kind of, for me personally, it reeked of, kind of bankster money and MI6 money. So now when Kevin says that there's actually been a memo mentioning the court, right, being passed around in the intelligence services, I'm like, okay, right? I'm not surprised that MI5 is involved, and I would not go anywhere near anything that involves those guys, because they are the ones who have, trafficked me, who have sex trafficked me, and who have mutilated me. And they haven't stopped mutilating me. So there's no change of heart in my case. why should we trust MI5 ever again, right? They are in basically for the big kill, and I think they're in for the full-blown genocide. Okay, so this is all I wanted to say. I'm going through and I'm kind of clicking on show so that your comments try to appear. If you feel censored, please know that it's not me censoring it. It's basically Google. Hang on, there's one more comment. Okay, somebody said the white peacock is a symbol of purity and love. The peacocks are opposite each other, like the two hearts. Yeah, but it's like, you know, the two hearts were already problematic because they were in the endless loop. So I'm not sure, you know, and what I would need is somewhere a reference where you can see that the peacocks are a symbol of purity and love, because the only symbol from the cartel I could find of the peacock is the one in the you know, in the Joseph Kahn music video, where it's really about devouring an animal and it's about food on display. So I would really need some sort of references for that. But anyway, the most important thing is not just to take what I say on trust. The most important thing is that you start thinking and start investigating yourselves, and maybe use this as a sort of guidance of what to look into, what sort of questions to ask yourself, and you know, how to proceed yourselves. But for me, the bottom line is, because people keep saying to me, oh, Kevin Annett, he's just a fraud and he just made it up. Well, you know, even if you thought that the tribunals never happened, and what, all these people making the testimonies just did it for fun, I don't know. But even if you said that, the points that he's making are unique. I don't know anybody else going on about the Vatican, the crimes of the crown, and so on. I mean, actual serial killings, right, and genocide. I don't hear anybody else make these sort of points. You know, if he were one out of many people shouting this, I would say, okay, right, now give me a better alternative. But right now, there is no better alternative. And frankly, he's the only one talking about this, right? So what's the danger to us and our community? Well, Kevin makes the point that he doesn't even need to be involved in these tribunals. He's just teaching people how to do it, right? So by setting up your own common law tribunal, you're not obliged to invite Kevin Annett at all, right? You can take the education that he's providing in his book about how to set up a common law training manuals. If you find a problem with that, you can notify me and Kevin and all the other people who would be interested, and point out, oh, well, you know, this part is not how it's done in the common law and so on. And I would really appreciate that, right? But that would then use that as a starting point for a step process of learning, right? And then still we benefited from the fact that he opened the debate. He's already trying to showcase the things that he says have been successful in the past. And everything that he says, frankly, is also what I kind of see, right? When he says that they start caving in when you go after their money. Yeah, absolutely, right? So for me personally, he has said all the right things. And as an educational and motivational talk, I find it extremely valuable. I want to learn from him, you know, how he thinks it's done. Then I want to learn from dissenting voices who say, actually, the common law tribunal should be done like that. And I'm very open to comments like that. But at this moment, nobody is forthcoming on facts and criticisms about his common law process. Everybody is just attacking him as a person. And people are attacking me for bringing him on. And then I would like to say, well, I'm sorry, that's freedom of speech. On my channel, I would like to investigate these things. For that, I need to hear both sides, right? I'm going to present it like that and then add in my own opinion because, hey, it's my channel, right? And that's just part of the process. So I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. And this is why I keep bringing him on, because also I found that he is extremely motivational, right? Even if you don't want to involve him in your court case, you still think, yeah, goddamn, we can do it, right? And we need this encouragement. So I encourage you to listen to these broadcasts, make up your own mind, take what you like, improve on what you don't like, and let's start this process of building this, because at the end of the day, none of us can do this alone, and we have to build something that works, right? But we have to build it together. So thank you very much for listening. I also would like to say, final sentence, that as regards the ITNJ, I am extremely worried because of Robert David Steele, because of what Sasha Stone said, because of the alleged links to MI5. which, by the way, seemed to match up with what I saw about the cartel signaling myself. So I personally will stay far away from the ITNJ at this moment in time. I will focus on my court cases, and I will focus on the common law tribunal and be involved in the setting up of one that I trust. Okay. But I do not per se discourage people from going to the ITNJ, because as far as I can see, they do publish your testimony and there are people listening to your testimony, and you will get through to a lot of very good commissioners. Okay, so what we can also do is, even if you don't like the ITNJ, take what's good about it and kick what's bad about it away, right? But then for that to work, please, if the ITNJ founder and, you know, a portrayed chief counsel start threatening Kevin Annett, right, and start sending me emails like that, oh, if you ask another question, you know, you'll be marked as spam. Maybe people could communicate with the ITNJ and say their opinion about that. And also remember that the threat made to Kevin Annett was about removal from the public sphere. This is a very unusual threat, right? I mean, sedition is the triggering the psychiatric evaluation and removal from the public sphere. Now, with these three, I have a huge issue. But regarding the removal from the public sphere, right, then the public should have a say in it, no? I mean, they want to remove somebody from you, the public. Maybe you could speak up about that, right? Do you want Kevin Annett removed from the public sphere? By the way, would you even have a right to say so, right? I mean, he still has genuine rights of his own, of free speech, of existing in the public, you know, domain. So removal from the public sphere is a very highly criminal term to me, you know, because no matter what you do, even serial killers, charged and convicted serial killers who are in jail, still have a presence in the public sphere, right? You still hear articles about them and so on, right? So removing somebody from the public sphere is basically wiping them from collective memory. This is what the Nazis did. And this is what Stalin did when he murdered millions and millions of people in Russia. So I am not happy with that. And I am absolutely not happy with people threatening that. Okay? Because I actually consider them to be covert little Nazis and little, you know, potential Stalinist genociding maniacs. And when they also happen to have rather sociopathic email communications, it's a big fat warning sign for me, you know? Actually, I just remembered one of the things I wanted to share with you guys to finish off, if those who are still here, I wanted to share with you my response to Robert David Steele when he sent me this, you know, email. And remember that he sent me the email saying, if I hear from you again, you know, you'll be marked as spam. So I actually incurred the, hang on, here it is. Yes. You know, I basically incurred the danger of being marked as spam, but I actually thought, so what? So let me just, this is basically my ultimate point about Robert David Steele. So let me share my screen and show you. Okay, let me share my screen. And I think it's this one. Okay, so I wrote back, and as I said, I included all the other, you know, Intel whistleblowers, because I think this is a public matter, so you can see that. And I wrote, Dear Robert, legally speaking, there's no problem with the publication of emails. Okay, most likely they were not marked as private and confidential, were they? And it appeared that you were making statements as chief counsel of the ITNJ and on behalf of the ITNJ, which hardly constitutes private email. Moreover, in the case of threats made against a person, it's a right, and some might legally argue even a duty, to alert the general public. Furthermore, given that the threats included removal from the public sphere, the public sphere has to be informed, given that it might have a thing or five to say about that. Also, I distinctly remember the recent publication of vast amounts of emails for the purposes of uncovering fraud, waste, and abuse, which turned out to be a good thing. I'm referring to WikiLeaks, of course, here, right? And by the way, you can check out Robert David Steele opinion about WikiLeaks, you know? So I cannot see anything objectionable in the publication of emails. When you say that Kevin Annett is out of control, whose control do you refer to? I ask because over here in Europe, we don't have a legal concept of control that sovereign citizens need to operate under beyond the rule of law, right? I mean, I have not seen a shadowy entity, exercising control over us, right? Anywhere in the legal documentation. Maybe I'm wrong, but if he knows about such an entity, maybe he could point it out, right? And then I said, talking about finances, I understood Kevin Annett to be funded through crowdfunding. I'm not aware of any large single donors, e.g. George Soros and his foundations, etc. If anything is known about that, I would be interested to hear it. And by the way, note how Steele hasn't replied to that. Okay, so he didn't say, oh, yes, it turns out Kevin Annett is founded by, I don't know what, George Soros's organizations are called. Oh, Kevin Annett is founded by the mafia, or Kevin Annett is funded by the Vatican Bank. He didn't say any of those. There's just deadly silence. And then I said, similarly, I would be interested to hear the funding sources of the ITNJ to be able to compare and contrast. Again, I haven't heard anything. When you state any further evidence of his broadcast communications will assure that he will face legal action in Canada with notice to UK, Belgium, Italy, Vatican, and US, as well as Australia and New Zealand, are you aware that the Vatican is a transnational criminal organization? And why is it that those specific countries are to receive a notice? It's an important question because on the surface of it, Kevin Annett has only criticized the ITNJ and its officers. He is a Canadian citizen, and the founder and chief counsel of the ITNJ are Americans. So why is it that the UK, Belgium, Italy, Vatican, Australia, and New Zealand are to be notified? The only connection I can see is that these are the countries of the Five Eyes Intel crime syndicate, the headquarters of NATO, brackets, as some argue, a ruthless and highly criminal Nazi organization, close brackets, and the country which the seat of the transnational criminal organization of the Catholic Church. Clarifying these matters, along with any potential Jesuit/Mason/Intel ties of the ITNJ, making references to the blood oath or lifelong oath of secrecy, is important because I am helping to prepare court cases for the victims and have to make a personal choice about which tribunal to entrust my case to. I also have to make regular public references to the ITNJ and the common law tribunals Kevin Annett advocates. As you can imagine, any hints of psychopathic behavior from the inverted commas chief counsel would be a counterindication to approach the ITNJ. Your threatening line, please do not email me again or you will be marked as spam, in response to valid questions constitutes for me such psychopathic behavior, which, as you know, is a mental illness classified as the most dangerous by Dr. Robert Hare, the field expert in the matter of psychopathy. I would look forward to clarification of the important points I raised in my previous email and this one, which go to the core of the validity of the ITNJ. I hope you still read this email, given that its appearance in your inbox would trigger its marking as spam. Best wishes, Catherine. Right? Now, you have heard the full exchange between me and this guy, and this last email is where I stand. Right? I find what I've witnessed extremely out of order. And let me check my inbox to this. At this point in time, I still haven't received any communication whatsoever to answer my questions. So unless somebody answers my questions about the ITNJ, right, I am not willing to recommend people going there openly. I say, as I said before, you're more than welcome to go there, right, with the bracket that you are aware of what these people have planned. And then you system judo it by saying, fuck you, guys. I'm just going to use the good commissioners of the ITNJ, and I'm going to do good work, and I'm going to use my public testimony to activate the network effects that, as I tell you, are super powerful, and this is what people are afraid of, to activate other people to come forward and basically snowball, MI6 into oblivion with this. Okay? But if you do that, please keep a very, very close eye on. Oh, by the way, I've just remembered something very, very important about the ITNJ, because I've just remembered there was one last thing I wanted to. I didn't go through the presentation properly, I think, because in one of these slides, yes, I forgot one page. Now, I'm very sorry. I'm very, very sorry, but this is super important. Sorry, guys, that I'm dragging on for so long, but this has to go in because I now remembered. This was the smoking gun for me. Now, on the presentation of it, after this blood oath, I also looked through the, it's under the frequently asked questions. What is the symbolism of the ITNJ logo? Okay, now let me show you this because let me share my screen and go through this right now. Okay, so hang on, share screen. This is very, very important. Okay, so bear with me. I will make it worth your time. So this is where I got up to previously. Okay, so the next page, which I forgot to click to, this is the last page which I left out. It is, as you can see, the URL. This is from the frequently asked questions page, and it's under the question, what is the symbolism of the ITNJ logo? Now, the text there read the following. The pine cone motif, now, and I pointed out that pine cones don't have long stems, but artichokes do, okay? Now here they say the pine cone motif in the ITNJ logo denotes the pineal gland in Homo sapiens. It's the organ within the human brain which connects our mechanical intelligence to our meta-intelligence. And note the spelling mistake carefully, because meta-intelligence is not connected with a hyphen, but a wiggle. Okay, this is not a proper hyphen. And I'm thinking meta-intelligence, the what, right? I.e. our capacity to see outside the box, ergo to step outside the proverbial matrix. It is therefore the anchor point of our consciousness to the heavenly realms. Now, anchor points are mind control triggers. Anchor points. I told you about, you know, me meeting my stalker in the Oxford University parks, and he had a fake anchor tattoo on his arm, right? That's an anchor point. That's what he was trying to say. Let this meeting be an anchor point, and let's, you know, traumatize you with this. Yeah, with an onslaught of old wankers. But you have to know that anchors are this. They are memory anchors or mind control triggers. So you have this pineal gland, you know, reference, meta wiggle intelligence with a telltale spelling mistake, and then anchor points mentioned in the same paragraph. Now I find this highly, you know, eyebrow raising. And then it goes on, the language of law, brackets legalese, has been and continues to be a veiled language by its very design. The brackets close brackets use of words and meanings equates to spellbinding. Okay, now spellbinding is, again, when you misspell things, right? When cartel members misspell things, they think that they're casting a spell on you, right? Now they are saying the misuse of words is spellbinding. It equates to spellbinding, binding people by a spell. Now this is a vocabulary that frankly nobody in the frickin' world knows outside of British intelligence and the cartel, right? The casting of spells. I have heard it a lot from MI5 and MI6 agents and whistleblowers and agents who are contacting me over Twitter with thinly veiled agent accounts. They go on about casting spells by misspelling, but nobody in the whole wide world would know this unless they're a cartel member. Now, the next sentence is the ritualized magic, whereby magic is written with a J and the Germanized CK. Okay. Now, the ritualized magic that law has been subverted toward has not served humankind, but has contrarily conspired to delude us from our higher expression. Now, in the second paragraph, they are using both spellbinding, which is a British intelligence / cartel term, and ritualized magic. Now, I have shown you YouTube music videos where magic has been used, right? Magicians and magic as a cartel insider symbol for, you know, the British cartel and MI6 and all that, magic. You also have the Snowden leaks about the GCHQ documents, where they're talking about making cyber magicians and about magic. So for me, this is very much a British intelligence, you know, lingo. So if you have the Westminster Commission, right? Westminster in the UK, and on the frequently asked questions, they are specifically talking about the symbolism of the ITNJ logo, and they are referring to meta intelligence. Do you remember metadata and intelligence, right? It's connecting our mechanical intelligence to our meta intelligence. So in other words, it's connecting our, you know, mechanical intelligence. What would that be? You know, human intelligence, as in, you know, stuff out there that you can look at and touch. And it's connecting these two to metadata, perhaps, or maybe stuff, you know, data from facial analysis of victims, maybe when they recount their testimony. That would be meta-intelligence, right? They are referring to that, to anchor points, to spellbinding and ritualized magic. Now, by this point, I'd already decided that these people are cartel. But then it continues. The ITNJ is breaking these invisible bonds. Ooh, invisible bonds, hey? Right? And repurposing the language of law. It is reclaiming jurisprudence and restoring the foundational access of trust and equity. Excuse me? Trust? Well, when I think about trusts, I'm thinking about the, what's it called? The Sestui Key trusts, right? That we are all placed under as human slaves. And equity brings to mind equity law, right? Is that as opposed to common law? I don't know, right? Because the International Tribunal of Natural Justice also doesn't really make reference to common law, does it? Now, the figure of 8 symbol on the lateral plane in the ITNJ logo alludes to the cycle of infinity. Yeah, fuck me. That's exactly what I thought. But the cycle of infinity is, for example, the snake biting its own tail by the Vatican, right? That's the cycle of infinity. And they say this denotes an absolutist approach by the ITNJ to pure truth. And they hyphenate pure truth. It's not pure truth, it's pure truth. So, excuse me, is pure truth the new quantity here, right? And they do it again in the next sentence. Pure truth, again hyphenated, is not by degrees, and where it is enshrined will ever serve to anchor the heavens to the causal realm. And it's all this is written by Wiggle, Sasha Stone, comma, founder. So this stuff is coming from Sasha Stone, all right? References to meta-intelligence, the anchor points, spellbinding, ritualized magic, foundational access of trust and equity, the absolutist approach by the ITNJ to pure truth, you know, hyphenated as a compound noun. And then the other thing is the anchoring the heavens to the causal realm. Now, the heavens are inside the cartel code for the Vatican leadership. And for example, in the Bible, which by the way is a cartel brainwash manual, God is code for the head of the mafia. All right? So the heavens are the code for Vatican leadership. So if they want to anchor something, right, anchor the heavens to the causal realm, right? Now, the causal realm, are they aiming to causing it all again? Do you see what I mean? And now, my provocative question was, instead of pure truth, hyphenated, for the access powers of trust and equity, can't we simply have pure truths for justice and tort claims and brackets death penalties? Okay, do you see this? Because when you're talking equity, you have a different set of law than when you're talking common law. Okay, so It's very, very important. But anyway, so this was, and now hopefully you see why I was trying to make your time worth your, you know, worth your money, you know, your input, your effort to wait. It's because when I read this on the website, it absolutely blew my mind. Okay. And the one thing I need to finish off with is actually prove to you that this is indeed on the ITNJ website. So I will try to find the frequently asked questions very quickly. FAQ and hearing cases. So there's a symbol. Yes. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I think it's still here. Okay, so let me share my screen and let me take you there because you need to see it. Now that you have seen the analysis, please take the time to confirm that everything I'm saying is the truth. Okay. Let me share my screen. I hope you see this thing now. So I am now on the itnj.org website and I clicked on FAQs here at the top right, second to last link. You get to the frequently asked questions and then, you know, something like half down the page or just the last question above questions about operations of the tribunal, you have what is the symbolism of the ITNJ logo. If you click on this, it expands. And here you see everything that I've said to you. And I would like to highlight, although you probably can't see my cursor, in the second line, please convince yourself that meta-intelligence hasn't been hyphenated. There's actually a wiggle. And now the little squiggle wiggle looks like a snake. Okay, so instead of a straight line, it looks like a little snake. So meta-intelligence, kind of with a reference to the Vatican crime cartel, as symbolized by the snake. And then you have here, I mean, curiously, right, the second paragraph and all others are in italics, and the first one is in normal font. But in the second paragraph, you will see in the second line spellbinding and the ritualized magic. And just look at how magic is written. It's written MAJICK. Now, the only people I have ever seen write magic like that were cartel members and were trolls associated with the cartel. Ritualized magic. It's right there in front of your eyes. Okay, and then in the third paragraph, you can see the reference to breaking invisible bonds, right? Like what? The bonds of blood oaths or what? And then you have the foundational axis of trust and equity, making reference to equity as opposed to common law. And then in the final paragraph, in the fourth paragraph, you can see that pure truth is hyphenated twice. So it's not pure truth, it's a new compound noun, pure truth, whatever the hell that is. Pure truth. You know, pure truth is not hyphenated. And then you have a little squiggle wiggle before Sasha Stone, right? So make of this what you will, people. But when I combine all this, right, I mean, how on earth do you get the FAQ referring to ritualized magic, right? And this is a commission into human trafficking and child sex abuse, which typically uses ritualized magic as in, you know, abuse, human sacrifice, ritual, human sacrifice. So anyway, I made this long enough. Thank you so much for listening. I really think this is all important. Educate yourself, keep your eyes open. Do not let yourself be intimidated. If anybody threatens you or intimidates you, make it public. As you can see, they won't like it, but fuck them, because we are all about transparency. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.